Throughout human history, dating as far back as the Neolithic era, mankind has always looked to expand its borders, to grow in knowledge and size. In the past, this could be seen through empires like Greece and Rome, expanding their borders, or conquistadors coming to the Americas. But now, we look to the stars.
Man's quest to the stars was conceived far earlier than anyone could have dreamed about going to the moon. The first solid-state rocket propellant was developed by the Chinese in 1232 CE for defense against a Mongol invasion. Europe encountered this new radical technology as Mongolian conquest exchanged Eastern technology with the West. Just 800 years later, we find the beginning of modern early space exploration in Hitler Germany, 1942. German scientists like Wernher von Braun designed the V-2 rocket as a weapon for Nazi Germany. However, after the war, many of these scientists defected to America and began to help with the U.S. space exploration efforts.
CBS Television presents a special report on Sputnik 1, the Soviet space satellite. Douglas Edwards reporting.
Until 2 days ago, that sound had never been heard on this earth. Suddenly, it has become as much a part of 20th century life as the whir of your vacuum cleaner. It's a report from man's farthest frontier, the radio signal transmitted by the Soviet Sputnik, the first man-made satellite as it passed over New York earlier today.
This shocking first step in modern space exploration proved man's grasp was no longer constricted by gravity. Sputnik paved the way for modern satellites could look back down on us, warn us of hurricanes, keep us from getting lost, and instantly encounter and exchange with other cultures. Satellites were our first venture into space unknown, and Sputnik was a frontrunner.
The Russians launching Sputnik was sort of an impetus for getting us started and going at a faster pace. Another way the Soviet space program encouraged us to speed up our program is when the Soviet Union launched the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin, on April 12, 1961. 3 weeks later, when Alan Shepard became the first American to go into space, President Kennedy asked Vice President Johnson to go off and get with the administrator of NASA, James Webb, and some other experts on space exploration, and he said, come up with a program where we have a chance to move ahead of the Russians, a program, a goal that we could set where we have a reasonable chance of getting there first. And so they came back and said, let's land a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
As humanity gazed at the heavens, often did the question of, can we reach the stars and could we even survive it, arose. All we could do was wonder, from scientist to common man alike. And yet, these early pioneers, Yuri Gagarin, Alan Shepard, Gus Grissom, and John Glenn, blew that president away. These astronauts and cosmonauts did not just explore space, but new areas in science, technology as well. Computers were forced to go exponentially. And many of the things we take for granted today come from our extraterrestrial explorations. It was during this tumultuous time that John F. Kennedy gave his famous ultimatum about what he wanted to achieve on the new frontier by the end of the decade.
But this is not merely a race. Space is open to us now, and our eagerness to share its meaning is not governed by the efforts of others. We go into space because whatever mankind must undertake, free men must fully share. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
JFK's impassioned speech gave the United States a defined goal for space exploration. At this stage in time, the extent of America and the USSR's encounter with other countries was limited to the competition between the two world powers. Many firsts in exploration were happening, and the exchange of our new knowledge was not too far off the horizon. On December 1, 1968, Apollo 8 was launched. This was the first mission to orbit the moon, allowing astronauts to gather information and necessities to land on the moon. It was Christmas Eve when the crew was able to make the first live satellite broadcast from space back home. This eventually opened up the door for international collaboration in space.
And for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
Not long after this, on July 20th, 1969, the space race was over. Neil Armstrong stepped foot onto the moon, fulfilling the promise of John F. Kennedy made at the beginning of the decade.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The information we had in Soviet Union at that time about American space program was very, very limited. We didn't know that Americans are trying to land a person on the moon. And when it happened, it was a shock to me. The explanation from Russian government, Soviet government, was that we don't have the goal to send the person on the moon.
July 17, 1975 was the dawn of a new era in space. At 3:17 p.m., the American Apollo crew docked with the Russian Soyuz crew over 1 million miles over the heads of the people on Earth they represented. When the hatch was opened between the Russian and American capsules, astronauts Thomas Stafford, Vance Brand, and Donald Slayton shook hands with cosmonauts Alexei Leonov and Valery Kubizov, marking the start of international encounter and exchange in space without borders. This would eventually lead into international collaboration, with 15 total countries coming together to form the International Space Station. In his 1984 State of the Union address, Ronald Reagan kickstarted the movement that brought 15 different countries together to help create the International Space Station. Over the years, this floating laboratory has enabled scientists all over the world to work together on over 1,000 different experiments in the unique atmosphere and exchange discoveries such as the discovery of positrons, which almost completely proves the existence of dark matter. They also discovered a new way to deliver medicine that helps with cancer treatment. One of the big goals of the International Space Station was to see if humans could live in space, working together in harmony. After 17 years of flight and many encounters and exchanges between nations, Dmitry Pranario sums it up when he says, "The space station is the brightest example of the long and fruitful cooperation by space agencies. After over 130 NASA space shuttle missions, virtually every astronaut in NASA's shuttle program has experienced international encounter and exchange."
Recently, we flew to Chicago to speak with Greg Harbaugh, former astronaut who served on space shuttle missions STS-39, 54, 71, and 82. He is now the current CEO of the Sigma Chi Foundation, and on STS-71 he served as the flight engineer on a 7-man up, 8-man back mission, which was also the first docking mission for the Russian Mir space station. He speaks about his personal encounter with Russian cosmonauts on this exchange mission.
One of the things that I found so fascinating about the shuttle, being part of the shuttle Mir crew, STS-71, that was the first shuttle to dock with the Russian Mir space station, the first really big cooperative venture between America and Russia since Apollo Soyuz, is that we could always meet at the technical level and we could get to a reasonable answer for whatever the challenge was. We had very demanding criteria for the final closure and contact between Space Shuttle Atlantis and the Mir. The criteria was set up for a variety of reasons, but it was all technical. And you know, that's kind of the beauty of science and engineering, is that's a way to take, you know, all of the sort of the political elements of things out of it. Is if you're just talking about the technical challenge of it, what would it take to build a space station or fly up and rendezvous and dock with the Mir space station, or to physically get humans safely to and from Mars? If you just look at it at a purely technical level, the answers become self-evident. What I feel like we've taken away from not only the Shuttle Mir program, but the International Space Station, is the ability to work with clarity and come to reasonable, proper conclusion to safely reach the objective, achieve the goal, because we were all focused on getting to that same endpoint.
Where we've been is spectacular, but we're not done yet. So where to next? NASA has been partnering with private companies not only to send men to Mars, but working on the initiative to send the common man to space. Wherever space exploration goes, humanity works hand in hand, exchanging technology, research, ideas, and innovation for the betterment of all life.